For this week, we're going to be starting with conditional statement. Now, a conditional statement is when you're given a condition. So, once again, you're given a condition in order for a conclusion to happen. All right, so you're given a condition, and then if that condition happens, then you have a conclusion. That condition, we're going to be calling it the hypothesis. And then the result of the condition obviously will be the conclusion. Usually in a conditional statement, the hypothesis is identified with the if part, and the conclusion is identified as the then part. Now, for example, question number one, I see the words if and then. You guys can see the word if and then. Sometimes conditional statements, we call it if and then statements. The if part, so we can see the whole sentence says, if you can see the stars, then it is night. The if part is what we know as the hypothesis. The then part, it is what we know as the conclusion. So for this part, I'm going to be asking to identify the hypotheses and conclusion of each conditional statement. If I was just asking for the hypotheses, just want to know the hypotheses, that's the if part without the word if. So the hypotheses of question number one will be you can see the stars. I'm just going to copy it word by word. Don't be changing the wording on this. If I was asking for the conclusion, I will write it is night. The conclusion is the then part without the word then. Notice I wrote it word by word. So I wrote it is. I didn't abbreviate it as it's. I wrote it is. So keep it word by word. So the hypothesis is the if part. The conclusion is the then part. Let's take a look at question number two. I want to see if I can find my if and my then parts. My question says, well, the statement says, if x is an even numbered, then x is divisible by 2. I can see the if part and I can see the then part. The hypothesis is the if part. The conclusion is the then part. So if I was asking for the hypothesis, like what's the hypothesis of this conditional statement, I will write x is an even number. I'm just writing for the hypothesis, I'm writing the if part. For the conclusion, I will write x is divisible by 2. The conclusion is the then part. Once again, keep it word by word. Now, in these two cases, the if was at the beginning, the hypothesis was at the beginning, and the conclusion was at the end, but that is not the case always. Looking at question number 3, it has two wheels if it is a bicycle. Now, in this case, I see my word if not at the beginning, but towards the end. I see the word towards the end. So the if part, I said the if part is always going to be the hypothesis. It doesn't have to be at the beginning. It's just the if part. Now, a sentence, we can start with the word if, but we cannot start with the word then. So we're not going to see the word then in this case because the conclusion in this case is at the beginning. So if I was asking for the hypotheses, I will write it is a bicycle. The hypothesis in this case is I'm going to write it is a bicycle. Once again, keep it word by word. If I was asking for the conclusion, I will write it has two wheels. Keep in mind because the number 2 was written in letters TWO, I wrote TWO for 2. I didn't write the number 2, so don't change the wording. Keep it as it is. Now for our last example, let's take a look at number 4. The statement here says the sun is shining if it is 12 o'clock p.m. I can identify my if part. I can see my if part. So I'm going to say that my conditional statement, my hypothesis, in this case is at the end, My conclusion in this case is at the beginning. My hypothesis is the if part. My conclusion is the then part. The if part is not always at the beginning. So if I was asking for the hypotheses, I want to know what the hypothesis of this statement is. I will write it is 12 o'clock p.m. Now, if I was asking what's the conclusion will be the sun is shining. So in this case, notice how on my instructions I was asking for identify the hypotheses and the conclusion. For the instructions, I wrote, I want to know the hypotheses and I want to know the conclusion of each conditional statement. Now, on your homework, make sure you read the instructions. Some of them are just going to ask for the hypotheses, just the hypotheses. Some of them are going to ask for the conclusion, just the conclusion. So once again, make sure you guys read the instructions.